Should I read the next one?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay, so this is my another bright blue tab. Just for the record, there are so many bright pink tabs in this book that I ran out of bright pink tabs. So
Do one of those next. Then.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm at the tail end of a cold and I'm not the time to lose my voice, but so this is when they're at the pizza place and Alpha is indicating in this secret way that Matthew can't understand, but Frankie does, that Alpha did actually remember her from the shore. Basically, Alpha is communicating in a secret language to Frankie with the things he's saying to Matthew. And Alpha says, "That's the thing about women," said Alpha, drumming his fingers on the Formica tabletop. "They're not voracious, you don't think?" Matthew said. Alpha ate another garlic knot. "Maybe they are somewhere inside, but they don't act on it. They're always eating half the custard and then giving the rest of the cone away," which is what happened with Frankie and Alpha on the beach. There it was again, the custard. Alpha wanted Frankie to know he remembered and that somehow he was disappointed in her. Was that why he hadn't pursued her? Because he could have, couldn't he, despite Matthew's interest? He thought she wasn't voracious, that she didn't go after what she wanted, that she was a girl who left the boardwalk as soon as her mother called her cell. And then, in the meantime, they've bought these garlic knots. Frankie didn't like garlic. It made her nauseated. But she forced Miss PacMan to eat the last of the pellets in her video maze and left the intermission between levels to play on its own while she walked to the booth where Matthew and Alpha were sitting. Will you read this? I'm losing my voice.
Sorry, where Matthew and Alpha were sitting. "Weren't you getting those to go?" she asked, sitting down and pointing at the bag of garlic knots. "Yeah, but where are we going anyway?" asked Alpha. "They'll stink up the Mini Cooper anyway." "Let me have one," she told him. He handed her the open bag. Wincing only slightly, she ate the knot in 2 bites.
So it's this moment where, like, I feel like this is a bad moment for Frankie. She's trying to prove to Alpha that she does take what she wants, that girls can take what they want, what she wants, but she proves it by taking something she doesn't want at all.
Well, I made a note about that scene as well, because the note I made about the scene was, she walked away from a video game to prove to the boys she was masculine. But the video game was Ms. PacMan.
Oh, right.
So it was so complicated in my head. Boys think girls don't like video games. She wanted to play video games instead of eating. He bullied her because he knew perfectly well she was listening. He bullied her into coming to eat something she didn't want. So she walked away from a video game which boys think girls don't like, but the video game was this totally feminized version of the normal video game.
Right.
I also just thought of something else, because there's also a setup between coolness and geekiness in this book. And video game is she walks away from the geek parties, and she walks away from the video game also.
Even though geeks are usually... Geekiness is this thing that girls are usually not allowed to have.
Exactly, but they're also, the book sets up that, but then it also sets up, there's geekiness and coolness in boys and girls in both.
Did I already
Yes.
say my thing about information as currency?
No.
Okay. I feel like Alpha especially, in lieu of having actual money
yeah.
the way that everybody else is, he more than anyone else uses information as currency, withholding and sharing at specific times.
That's what I meant about when he,
Yeah.
the beach, and how
Yeah.
he grabs power by not,
Right. And I find the way that he uses this so fascinating. Like, the fact that it was important to him that Frankie knows that he remembers her, but also that he won't acknowledge remembering her.
Right.
And it works. Because
he gets all this power over her.
Yeah.
And she's really stuck. I mean, what is she going to do
Yeah.
in that situation to make any sort of point whatsoever?
And there's
At every
like,
point she loses.
I can't think of a way
This
to
is
do
why I
it.
hate Alpha. I mean, just in the sense that he's grabbing all this power over
Yeah.
her. Like from the very beginning, where he doesn't say, "Oh, I have a connection to that school too," and then when he won't acknowledge her out loud, exactly what you just said, he's using that as his power.
And, I mean, Frankie, the only time that she really uses information as currency in this is by pretending to be Alpha.
Which is huge. And
That's interesting.
there's so much in this book. This is why it's so kind
We need
of
to write a book about the book.
We do need to write a book about the book. There's so the thing is that this is a book about two people who are disempowered by the traditional power structures, who the only people they can battle for their place in the hierarchy is each other.
Yeah, I made a note of the fact that, yes, Frankie does shake up the patriarchal power structure, but her only way in is through the one other vulnerable person in
Yeah.
the structure.
And in the end, if it had been Callum or somebody else who was going to get victimized, or even Matthew, then, you know, who was going to get in trouble, somebody whose parents could have bought them out, then I would have been rooting for Frankie to just not deal with it, you know, fine,
Right,
let somebody else get in
right.
trouble for this. But because it's Alpha, because it's the poor kid who's there on a scholarship, who's going to lose his chance of going to college, she has to come forward no matter
Yeah.
what. And
He's also the only one who would have let it continue. Like I do not see any of those other boys at that first meeting pretending that he knows what's going on and taking credit so immediately.
Yeah.
He knows he has to.
right, because
Or
he's
decides
so
he has to.
vulnerable.